Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to go over my entire flip process on this 2008 Nissan Altima. My name is Jeremy, this is Region Automotive, and let's get to work. Before we get started, I'd like to give a shout out to Cars Off the Wall. Originally, I wasn't going to do a flip video on this car just because it needs so little work. But he's been following my channel, been commenting on my videos, and keep me motivated to keep up with these flip videos. So shout out to Cars Off the Wall. I'd recommend you guys to check out his channel. It's quite fun. He does strictly flip videos, and he does a lot of salvage cars where he repairs them, inspects them, and sells them for profit. So it's a different angle than I usually do when I flip cars. So once again, thanks to Cars Off the Wall for giving me the motivation to do a video on this car. Okay, so I will do my usual walk around on the car, and we'll talk about how much I got it for and what needs to be done and kind of my plans for this project. So before we start, I'll say this was kind of like a friend of a friend deal. So don't get too jealous, I guess, when I tell you how much I paid for it when we go over it. My neighbor actually knows I'm in the car business. So she reaches out to me whenever she needs a car, has a friend that needs a car, or has a friend that's selling the car. So this was the situation, is they got a new car and they wanted to get rid of this one and they didn't want to deal with the hassle of selling it privately online. So I gave them, you know, an offer. Originally they said they'd do $3,000. I told them 2,500 bucks, and then we met in the middle at 2,750, which I think if they took it to a dealer, they'd probably give them like 1,500 on trade-in. So I think it still worked out for them because, like I said, they bought a new car. It's not their business of selling cars, it's my business. So I gave them above trade-in and they got rid of it with no headaches. They just had to make a phone call and it was gone. So that being said, I paid $2,750 for this car. It has two things that I really liked about it. It has pretty low K for the year, 189,000 kilometers, I think. So this many miles. And then the owner that I bought it off of was the original owner, actually, and they're quite anal with the maintenance on their car. I'll show you in a sec here all the maintenance records I have for it. So mechanically, the car is pretty much perfect. As you can tell, it's running, it's quiet, there's no exhaust leaks, there's no knocks, tings, pings, anything like that. Really, the only work I'm going to do to it is the exterior. So first, we have this scuff on the bumper. I'll show you. It's on the clear coat, and I've actually had luck before where I've like wet sanded, or not clear coat, sorry, the 3M protection film. And I've had luck before actually where I've wet sanded the protection film and polished it, could just kind of clean up the scratch and get rid of the, you know, white scuffy looking stuff. And then there's a bit of rust starting on the panels. So this will be a good project actually, because I don't know if I've done a lot of body work on my previous project. So I'll show you how I'm going to sand that rust down to bare metal, treat it, and repaint and clear coat it just to make it look more presentable. And then here we have a bit of damage that turned into rust. So same thing, gonna sand it down, clean it up. I'll show you the entire process for that. Yeah, it's also great timing. We just got our first snowfall here in Western Canada, and this car came with a separate set of rims and winter tires that actually look to be in decent tread. And then there's a remote starter for it. I just bought a battery for it, so I'm gonna see if I can get it working. But if I can, that's like literally perfect time to sell this car with winter tires and a remote starter. So I would like to get it finished in the next day or two and listed while there's still snow on the ground. Anyway, we're in the trunk here. I won't show you too much because I don't want to have to blur out all the owner's information, but they had a full, or previous owner's information, they had a full maintenance folder of like literally all the receipts done on this car since new. So once we clean up that bodywork, I don't think we'll have a tough time selling it. Don't forget to subscribe, you guys, if you want me to keep rolling the flip videos. Okay, so I have the car set up in my garage now. And before, I'm going to set you up and show you me actually sanding the rust down. But before I do, I'll kind of explain a little bit on what I'm doing and my setup. If you see, the rust is kind of on the lip here, and it's working its way up. So this is going to be, this line here will be my work line. So I'm going to grind the rust up, but I will, even here, like it just goes up to this point. So I'll grind it up just a little bit until it's all bare metal. But I will not go past this line because this will be my final tape and paint line. Even here, like where there's like the little dent going out, I'll sand that down and fill it up with paint later, but I'm not going to grind that down because then if I have that ground down on bare metal, then I have to blend the paint into the rest of this surface, which I don't want to do. And again, this is just a you know, a little cleanup repair on a 14-year-old car. It's on a professional job here. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to sand down all that rust, staying on this one flat surface. Here, I'm going to put some tape because, again, I don't want to paint the bumper. I just want to get this rust cleaned up. And what I do to sand the rust down to metal first is I have a grinder here, and then you can get these sanding discs on the grinder. I find this works the best to get rid of rust and get it down to bare metal. And I have a pretty aggressive disc here. This is 60 grit. So I'm going to use this to sand down the rust, get down to bare metal, and then I'll step up and I'll start using sandpaper to blend the bare metal paint into the rest of the paint. I'll show you once we get there. Okay, so that's pretty much as far as I want to go with the grinder, getting down the rust on the metal there. Next, I just have some hand sandpaper, 80 grit, and I'm going to sand, pretty much what I want to do is try to get rid of that edge on the paint between the paint and then the area just ground. So I'm just going to kind of sand and feather that out with 80, and then I have 320, 600. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that for my first grind and sanding layer. So what I am kind of looking for when I sand with the 80 is, again, before I had that hard edge, like right where the grinder disc met the paint. So I used the 80 and I just sanded on that edge. You can see there's kind of like a gradient of like metal primer into paint. So I'm looking for that gradient, and when I feel this now, I no longer feel a rough edge, but I still feel a little bit to that gradient and kind of some of the sanding marks. So that's why I'm going to use a 320 and then the 600 to smooth this out. And then it should be nice and clean and prepped and, well, not quite ready to paint. We have to clean it first. Okay, so I have all the sanding done, and then to clean off the metal before I start to prep, like with tape and paper and stuff, I like to use compressed air to blow out all the dust, all the water. I want it 100% dry. And then I actually use brake cleaner because I'll get rid of like all the grease, contaminants, whatever that might flash off the water a little bit. And then I'll blow with compressed air again just to dissolve or evaporate the brake cleaner and get any little dust or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll start taping. And then actually when I tape, I'm going to tape for my first round just above the exposed metal because I'm going to primer first. And yes, I'll have a tape line, but then I'm going to sand that down afterwards. And the reason why I'm not going to tape on this edge right away is because I've done that in the past and I've had issues when I wet sand it afterwards. Like paint is always thin at the edge, you know, because it's slightly sloped or whatever, and it just kind of runs down. And then also it's kind of concentrated when you sand on the edge. So anyway, I've had issues where I've like taped here, and then I've like primed, painted, and clear coated at that line. Then when I wet sand it, actually like start to blend in the, or start to sand down the clear coat and the paint. And then I'd see like a line of primer, then it'd go into my paint. So to get rid of that, like I said, I'm going to tape just outside of the exposed metal because that's really what I want to cover with the primer. And then once the primer is dry, I'll sand that down, and then I'll make another tape line up here for my paint and clear coat. All right, I'm pretty happy with that tape job. Like I said, I taped it just over the metal because that's really where I want my primer to cover, is the bare metal. And for primer, I'm using 1K self-etching. This is kind of thicker primer that is really good for bare metal, and then it'll kind of fill any pits, scratches, imperfections. Like it goes on pretty thick. So I'll probably do, I don't know, 2 or 3 light coats of this. And then one thing I also like to do is use a heat gun. So I'll get the metal warm to touch before I spray. I'll heat the primer, kind of get that warm, and then I'll use a heat gun in between coats to flash off the primer. And then once I can like touch the primer without it sticking to my finger, it feels smooth, the surface feels dry, I will do the second coat. So as you can see, 3 coats of primer did the trick. And then I really like that heat gun to flash off in between coats. Like, I didn't have to wait long between coats. When I heated it, I flashed it off once it was like kind of dry to touch. And it was smooth and it wasn't like sticking on my finger. Then I just threw on the second coat and repeat. So yeah, now that we have those 3 coats down, I'm gonna take the paper and the tape off, and then I'll probably heat it to a little bit more, make sure it's fully cured, and then I'll use 600 to sand the primer line down into the rest of our work surface like we're talking about. I am pretty happy with how that primer edge sanded down. So now I'm going to retape along that edge that we're talking about, and then I will do 2 or 3 light layers of base coat, and then once the base coat's dry, I'll do 1 or 2, probably 1 lighter layer, and then the second heavier layer of clear coat. We are nearing the end of the video. I'm not showing my usual walk around at the end of the project because the car hasn't really changed much since the start of the project. That's really the main work that I did to the car, was that body work. That's why I showed in detail me doing the body work. And then I did the similar thing on the driver door. There's that rust kind of starting on the door. So I did the same thing where I sanded or ground it down, sanded, prime paint, all that stuff. And then I wet sanded and polished that scuff on that clear coat. That turned out all right. So I'll insert my photos that I took right now. All right, you guys, the Nissan, I was about to say Kia. The Nissan has sold. So let's talk about the numbers. I listed the car for $6,500. I showed it twice. The second person offered me $6,000, and that's kind of the bottom I was looking for with my listing price there. So I accepted that offer right away. And my expenses in the car, so if you remember earlier, I bought it for $2,750. Then I'm kind of grossly rounding up the numbers to make for easier math. So again, rounded up about 150 bucks for the paint, clear coat, sanding, consumables, whatever, all that stuff. So that puts me $2,900 into the car. If you take my selling price of $6,000, subtract my cost of $2,900, that's a total profit of $3,100. Now for the time, and here's where it gets interesting. So again, grossly kind of rounding up the numbers, I figured I had about 7 hours into grinding the paint down with the sanding disc there, like feathering out the paint into the rest of the car. Primer, paint, clear coat, wet sanding, clear coat, polishing, figured about 7 hours for that. Then I gave myself about an hour to take photos, make the ad, show the car twice. So if you take my total profit of $3,100 and you divide it by my total hours of 8 hours, that works out to be $388 an hour. So it's pretty darn good on that one. I think that takes the record for the most I've made per hour flipping these vehicles. And that's kind of given me an idea to spend a bit more time looking for these cars. I think it'll be a little bit more relatable for you guys because I'll be doing a lot less mechanical work on them. And if I could find cars that are kind of running and driving for a decent price, you know, try to get there first if it seems like a decent deal, and clean them up, maybe a little bit of work here and there, and just see if we can maximize our profit with the least amount of time. So that's kind of the direction I think I'm going to take my flip videos here. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to stick around and find out if I can make that happen. Have a good day.